Genesis chapter 34 and 35. Starting with 34, which is a doozy. Dinah and the Shechemites. Now Dinah, the daughter Leah had borne to Jacob, went out to visit the women of the land. When Shechem, son of Hamor the Hivite, the ruler of that area, saw her, he took her and raped her. His heart was drawn to Dinah, daughter of Jacob. He loved the young woman and spoke tenderly to her. And Shechem said to his father Hamor, Get me this girl as my wife. When Jacob heard that his daughter Dinah had been defiled, his sons were in the fields with his livestock, so he did nothing about it until they came home. Then Shechem's father Hamor went out to talk with Jacob. Meanwhile, Jacob's sons had come in from the fields. As soon as they heard what had happened, they were shocked and furious, because Shechem had done an outrageous thing in Israel by sleeping with Jacob's daughter, a thing that should not be done. But Hamor said to them, My son Shechem has his heart set on your daughter. Please give her to him as his wife. Intermarry with us, give us your daughters, and take our daughters for yourselves. You can settle among us. The land is open to you. Live in it, trade in it, and acquire property in it. Then Shechem said to Dinah's father and brothers, Let me find favor in your eyes, and I will give you whatever you ask. Make the price for the bride and the gift I am to bring as great as you like, and I'll pay whatever you ask me. Only give me the young woman as my wife. Because their sister Dinah had been defiled, Jacob's sons replied deceitfully as they spoke to Shechem and his father Hamor. They said to them, We can't do such a thing. We can't give our sister to a man who is not circumcised. That would be a disgrace to us. We will enter into an agreement with you on one condition only, that you become like us by circumcising all your males. Then we will give you our daughters and take your daughters for ourselves. We'll settle among you and become one people with you. But if you will not agree to be circumcised, we'll take our sister and go. Their proposal seemed good to Hamor and his son Shechem. The young man, who was the most honored of all his father's family, lost no time in doing what they said, because he was delighted with Jacob's daughter. So Hamor and his son Shechem went to the gate of their city to speak to the men of their city. These men are friendly toward us, they said. Let them live in our land and trade in it. The land has plenty of room for them. We can marry their daughters and they can marry ours. But the men will agree to live with us as one people only on the condition that our males be circumcised as they themselves are. Won't their livestock, their property, and all their other animals become ours? So let us agree to their terms and they will settle among us. All the men who went out of the city gate agreed with Hamor and his son Shechem, and every male in the city was circumcised. 3 days later, while all of them were still in pain, 2 of Jacob's sons, Simeon and Levi, Dinah's brothers, took their swords and attacked the unsuspecting city, killing every male. What? They put Hamor and his son Shechem to the sword. What? And took Dinah from Shechem's house and left. The sons of Jacob came upon the dead bodies and looted the city where their sister had been defiled. They seized their flocks and herds and donkeys and everything else of theirs in the city and out in the fields. They carried off all their wealth and all their women and children, taking as plunder everything in the houses. Then Jacob said to Simeon and Levi, You have brought trouble on me by making me obnoxious to the Canaanites and the Perizzites, the people living in this land. We are few in number, and if they join forces against me and attack me, I and my household will be destroyed. But they replied, Should he have treated our sister like a prostitute? Chapter 35, Jacob returns to Bethel. Then God said to Jacob, Go up to Bethel and settle there and build an altar there to God, who appeared to you when you were fleeing from your brother Esau. So Jacob said to his household and all who were with him, Get rid of the foreign gods you have with you and purify yourselves and change your clothes. Then come, let us go up to Bethel, where I will build an altar to God, who answered me in the day of my distress and who has been with me wherever I have gone. So they gave Jacob all the foreign gods they had and the rings on their ears, and Jacob buried them under the oak at Shechem. Then they set out, and the terror of God fell on the towns all around them, so that no one pursued them. Jacob and all the people with him came to Luz, that is Bethel, in the land of Canaan. There he built an altar, and he called the place El Bethel. El Bethel means God of Bethel, because it was there that God revealed himself to him when he was fleeing from his brother. Now Deborah, Rebekah's nurse, died and was buried under the oak outside Bethel, so it was called Alon Bakuth, means oak of weeping. After Jacob returned from Paddan Aram, God appeared to him again and blessed him. God said to him, "Your name is Jacob, but you will no longer be called Jacob. Your name will be Israel." So he named him Israel. And God said to him, "I am God Almighty. Be fruitful and increase in number. A nation and a community of nations will come from you, and kings will be among your descendants. The land I gave to Abraham and Isaac I also give to you, and I will give this land to your descendants after you." Then God went up from him at the place where he had talked with them. Jacob set up a stone pillar at the place where God had talked with them, and he poured out a drink offering on it. He also poured oil on it. Jacob called the place where God had talked with him Bethel. The deaths of Rachel and Isaac. Then they moved on from Bethel. While they were still some distance from Ephrath, Rachel began to give birth and had great difficulty. And as she was having great difficulty in childbirth, the midwife said to her, "Don't despair, for you have another son." As she breathed her last, for she was dying, she named her son Benoni, but his father named him Benjamin. So Rachel died and was buried on the way to Ephrath, that is Bethlehem. Over her tomb, Jacob set up a pillar, and to this day that pillar marks Rachel's tomb. Israel moved on again and pitched his tent near Migdal Eder. While Israel was living in that region, Reuben went in and slept with his father's concubine Bilhah, and Israel heard of it. Jacob had 12 sons. The sons of Leah, Reuben the firstborn of Jacob, Simeon, Levi, Judah, Issachar, and Zebulun. The sons of Rachel, Joseph and Benjamin. The sons of Rachel's servant Bilhah, Dan and Naphtali. The sons of Leah's servant Zilpah, Gad and Asher. These were the sons of Jacob who were born to him in Paddan Aram. Jacob came home to his father Isaac in Mamre, near Kiriath Arba, that is Hebron, where Abram and Isaac had stayed. Isaac lived 180 years, and he breathed his last, and died, and was gathered to his people, old and full of years. And his sons Esau and Jacob buried him. Chapter 34, verses 1 through 4. Dinah, the only daughter of Jacob, went out to see some of the young women of the area, likely desiring to know how they lived. But during her visit, a man named Shechem, the son of the region's chieftain, took her and raped her. Adding insult to an injury, he then decided that he loved the young girl and wanted to marry her. Verse 5 through 7. Jacob heard that Shechem had defiled his daughter Dinah and that Shechem desired to marry her, but his response was surprisingly mute. Instead, it was Jacob's sons who became deeply grieved and very angry, rightly calling Shechem's actions an outrage that should not be done. Verse 8 through 24. Shechem's father, Hamor, seemed unaware of Jacob's son's rage, because he pursued the marriage deal further, presenting intermarriage between the two families as a profitable situation for everyone involved. Jacob's sons, taking after their father's old ways, answered Shechem and his father Hamor deceitfully. Plotting to take Shechem down by surprise, they required Shechem, Hamor, and all of their men to be circumcised, allegedly to make the marriage pure. Hamor and company considered this a small price to pay for a bride and all of Jacob's possessions, so they eagerly agreed. Verse 25 through 31. But Jacob's sons had no interest at all in a deal. The circumcision they required was a ruse to weaken the men, and when they were still in pain, two of Dinah's brothers, Simeon and Levi, avenged their sister's honor and slaughtered all the men of the town. They plundered the city as well, leaving Hamor's people devastated. Jacob, thinking of their long-term prospects in the land, was not pleased with the attack. He feared retribution from the other Canaanites in the area, who were much more numerous than they were. Most of the men in this story respond in the ways that show little faith in God. Shechem violated God's just laws and did violence to an innocent woman. Jacob didn't trust that God would maintain his family in the land like he had promised, and Jacob's sons used the sacred symbol of the covenant with God as a trick to murder far more people than were guilty. Chapter 35, verse 1. The violence of Simeon and Levi had Jacob terrified for his life. In the midst of this fear, God showed up with a new command. Get up, go to Bethel, and settle there. God's timing is never accidental. He spoke to Jacob in the middle of a family crisis because he knew Jacob was desperate enough to listen. Sometimes we should thank God for putting us flat on our backs, because only then are we facing the right direction. Verse 2. Jacob experienced a personal revival, which spilled over into a family revival. After completely abdicating his leadership role during the Dinah debacle, he finally manned up. In Jacob's revival, we see the 3 steps that anyone can follow when returning to God. First, he said, get rid of the foreign gods that are among you. Rachel, Jacob's favorite wife, had snatched some of her father's household gods. For the last 20 years, apparently, those idols had been in Jacob's household. Jacob announced it was time to make a clean break and put them away for good. Second, he said, purify yourselves. This is an extension of the first point. Get the idols out of your life and remove the sin from your midst too. Third, change your clothes. Changing garments symbolizes a reorienting of life. For instance, when a judge puts on his robe, he's not an ordinary man anymore. He has authority. In revival, God expects us to change our position, reorienting ourselves so that God's authority can flow through us. Verse 3. Jacob's revival hinged on the specific place of Bethel. God told him to go. So Jacob felt he must get up and go to Bethel to build an altar there to the God who answered in his day of distress. Bethel was the location where Jacob met God the first time, over 20 years before, when Jacob was on the run from Esau. God appeared to Jacob, promising to protect him, multiply him, and bring him back to Bethel. Jacob had known then that he was supposed to go back to that spot, but for 2 decades he had detoured. The good news was that God didn't abandon Jacob even when Jacob got off track. Jacob acknowledged, God has been with me everywhere I have gone. Verse 4 through 5. A few verses earlier, Jacob had cowered in fear because of what his enemies might do to him, but when he set out for Bethel, suddenly a terror from God came over the cities around them. What had changed? Jacob had stepped up to be the leader God called him to be. He led his family in revival, he listened to the voice of God, and in response, the same people he had been fearing turned to run. Verse 6 through 15. When Jacob arrived and built an altar in Bethel, God appeared to Jacob again and blessed him. The blessing and promise were nearly identical to those given to Jacob when he first arrived at Bethel. Jacob would be fruitful and multiply into an assembly of nations and would inherit the land. Most importantly, God repeated his promise to change Jacob's name to Israel, a symbol of a new identity and a new direction. God had not changed. The promise had only lain dormant until Jacob returned to a place where God could pull it off. Verse 16 through 18. God finally answered Rachel's prayer for a second son. She gave birth and named him Benoni, which means son of my sorrow, because she was dying. Jacob renamed the child Benjamin, which means son of the right hand, as an indication of the place the boy would have in Jacob's heart. Verse 19 through 26. Benjamin's special status was not merely a matter of Jacob's preference. Since Benjamin was born in the way to Ephrath, that made him the only son to be born inside of the promised land. To remind us of this distinction, the author recaps the full list of Jacob's sons, which would become the patriarchs of the 12 tribes of Israel, except for Benjamin. All of them were born to Jacob in Paddan Aram. Almost as an aside, the author stops to point out that Reuben went in and slept with his father's concubine Bilhah. Though Bilhah was not his mother, this was still an egregious sin similar to incest. While Reuben might have thought that no harm would come from his sexual sin, Israel heard about it, and Reuben's momentary thrill would thus become the very reason that Reuben would not inherit the covenant. This reminds us that no sin is committed in secret. In the end, everything comes to light. Verse 27 through 29. I love the reunion we see here at Isaac's death. Isaac, thought to be on death's doorstep 20 years prior, finally passed away after living for 180 years. But unlike the last time Isaac expected his death, when his sons were conniving against each other to steal his blessing, this time Esau and Jacob buried him together in cooperation. And that is the end of chapters 34 and 35. A crazy aside, with the story of what happened to Dinah and then Reuben sleeping with his father's concubine or whatever. It's just, it's really weird. It just goes to show what can potentially happen when somebody doesn't fully trust God and they look within themselves and get full of themselves and basically make idols of themselves and so on and so forth, which is very, very dangerous territory. But hey, if that's happening to you, do what Jacob did when he ran back to God. Throw your idols away. If you yourself are an idol, I hope that you come to that conclusion and you realize that about yourself and you take it out, throw it away, and focus on the Father and just come back. That's what he wants. Just doesn't matter what you've done, doesn't matter what you do, just come. But be sure to like and subscribe. May God bless everyone, and I will see y'all next time.